morning and welcome back. Well, it seems as if the ball is moving forward with regards to actually trying to find out exactly how many reported COVID deaths are due to coronavirus, as the Mail Online details here. They do, of course, go on to say that no, we don't think that doctors are saying that they're COVID deaths when they're not, because they're in on a big conspiracy. However, you don't actually need a big conspiracy to explain it all. All they're saying is that, well, it's the norm, and therefore it's reported even when it isn't the case. But you could say, well, if you've got more COVID patients, then of course you've got more funding for those reasons, and if they've been on ventilators and the like, it is done directly in the US, of course, with triple the funding if their patients go on ventilators. So there's that. But in the UK, of course, with such a big boost to the NHS, which they've been wanting for so long, done because of coronavirus. Of course, then you've got hospitals which have had decreased A&E admissions because people are scared about COVID. So it makes it easier for the doctors there if they don't need to work as much. Or conversely, if then they're saying that COVID is such a huge problem and everybody has them, then they're needed much more, and hence get paid more because they're working more. And then, of course, when it comes down to vaccination rollouts, then there's even more money to be made there. And not just with the contracts being awarded as they shouldn't be, as the investigation now into Halfcock, and saying that they haven't been transparent within 28 days about who the contracts are awarded to, as they're over 100,000, despite that being the law, that it really does get the noggin jogging as to why all these things are going on, seeing as the individual pieces can actually be explained even down onto an individual level, that it is in the doctor's best interest in order to simply be able to put it down as COVID. Now, unfortunately, death certificates and cause of death has never been a 100% accurate science, and it's only gotten worse in the wake of COVID, because with about a fifth of the tests not being reliable, with it no longer being a family doctor but just somebody who's on call putting it down as a COVID death, with different reportings, whether it be Public Health England saying if it's within 28 days that's being shown as a COVID death, or if it's the Office for National Statistics, which is that if they've been diagnosed with COVID, whether or not they've had a test and it could just be symptoms, then that's going to be put down as COVID. Basically, if it is one of the underlying factors, then it is the only factor in those instances. It doesn't matter if they've got other things like pneumonia or dementia or cancer or any other, as we say, comorbidities, which averages 2.8. It doesn't matter if they're above the average life expectancy. Any of these things doesn't matter. If COVID is put on the patient's report, then it is going to be the cause of death, the death certificate, according to the ONS. And different countries have different rulings, so trying to compare one to the other is a bit of a moot point. But nonetheless, that's how it goes. And for what it's worth, it is also worth noting that different countries report different things differently, so far as abortions, for example. At what point is it abortion instead of infanticide, for example? And then mass shootings, how many people need to be shot and how many people need to die from it. These kinds of things as well. They're just trying to say, oh, it's the same term, therefore it must be the same in the intricacies, is a fallible approach which will not give you the correct conclusion. So it's just worth bearing that in mind with any of these comparisons internationally. But what does this mean for individuals as well? Well, of course, the most obvious one is with more deaths being reported as coronavirus, then it pushes lockdown restrictions onto us for longer, because it's an excuse for draconian laws to be in place and enforced. But on the individual level, for grieving family members, for example, is that they can't be close to their loved one in the last few days of their life. And then, of course, the same with a funeral service, that they can't be with the body to pay their respects and to dress it, and for example, an open casket funeral, you can't have any of this. You can't go through and respect the dying person's last wishes simply for how they wish to be sent off from this world. You can't do any of that. So just the doctor going, yeah, why not? We've had a half-hour video call, and yeah, COVID, sure, that'll do me. Job's a good one. No one's really going to question that. But then, of course, the family has to suffer with the ramifications of that. And there are a plethora of reports, which are more high-profile than notable, of people who have had a half dozen COVID tests and are all negative, and yet it still comes down as a COVID death at the end because, well, yeah, it might have been pneumonia, but it's so similar. It's just a done thing to put it down as COVID. Yeah. Or they might have had it and recovered, but it's within 28 days, so we're going to put it down as COVID. Yeah. Or we're not really sure what it is, but I've got places to be and people to see, so if I put it down as COVID, then I can leave now. So that's what we're going to say. So these kinds of things, you can understand why it would happen on an individual level without it needing to be a top-down order to tell all doctors, if you can make a death a COVID death, do it because of what other shenanigans they wish to do. Sure, it can be orchestrated from the top in trying to get their Great Reset going, which they've been anchoring for quite a while, and it's quite well known. It's not a conspiracy to say that they're pushing for a Great Reset and to try and build back better. It's out there. I mean, obviously Johnson and Biden use Build Back Better as their slogans for their platforms, so that's not a conspiracy theory. And the Great Reset being published by the World Health Organization, for example, and them being brazen and blatant about it, also means that is not a conspiracy theory, as we're just using their own terms and saying, well, this is what they're saying, and we're saying that they're trying to achieve it, given that they're doing exactly what they said they're doing, and they're telling us why they're doing it. You can't really call that a conspiracy theory because they're not trying to cover something up or saying that it isn't happening. So we don't see how that would be a conspiracy theory. But getting back to the topic in hand, if the investigation would like to be launched, the issue is there isn't an investigation at the moment because it doesn't seem as if there is enough political will for it to happen as of yet. However, there is cross-party support for Liberal Democrats who are against the ruling government of the Tories, and actual right-wing conservatives like Paul Bristow, for example, who says it's almost certain that a number of deaths have been wrongly attributed to COVID-19. Not only has this skewed figures when data has been so important in deciding how we respond to the pandemic, it has caused distress and anxieties for relatives. Whether we have received the most appropriate figures should definitely be considered in any future inquiry. And that's perfectly fine, isn't it? That all we're looking for is the truth, and that's what we would like to be able to find. However, a Department of Health spokesman said, in response, "We are confident the death statistics are robust and provide an accurate picture of those who have sadly died from the virus. The guidance to doctors completing a medical certificate of cause of death explains they are expected to state cause of death to the best of their medical knowledge and belief." Except words from on the ground seems to suggest otherwise. When you're talking about 6 figures of deaths, and then a fifth of the tests being unreliable, that's going to knock 24,000 off already from 120,000. Okay, and then you're going to go with people who haven't actually been diagnosed in the first place. You're going to have people who have the other comorbidities and have probably just died of something else instead. If you're looking at the comparison for excess deaths, for example, and the thought that what COVID would have done is just taken out people a few months earlier than they would have died otherwise, so it's very heavy at the start and then tails off before we've seen, and then with 0 influenza cases, as I've commented on recently, you can check that back out, then it does kind of make sense to say, no, something's up here, and it doesn't take an expert or somebody who is deeply entrenched in the field in order to understand that this is going on. So how about, instead of having to fight all of these death certificates as individuals to have the word COVID removed, as is the case from the testimonies that they're putting forward here, that we simply say, maybe it needs to be a little bit more stringent in order to be COVID. It's not the presumption of guilt, it's the presumption of innocence, as in there actually needs to be work done in order to discern what somebody's died from. Not, let's assume it's COVID unless you can prove it otherwise, as seems to be the case at the moment. And it is vital, and it is vital for everyone, so the same as yourselves. If any of your friends or family do pass on, it is worth seeing what does the death certificate say, and trying to change it if it has been wrongly attributed to COVID. However, not only is this difficult to do when you're going up an entire institution, but if it is concurrent with when you're grieving for the loss of a loved one, that is asking unnecessary stress in order for you to get to the truth, which shouldn't be there in the first place. But without pushback from individuals, then government is always going to try and trample on your rights, as it always has done and always will continue to do so. So, the two things we can do at the moment are keep that individual action going on questioning any death that occurs, and secondly, maintain support and speak out and let the few MPs who wish to actually investigate this know that there is a lot of support for it, and we would like to know what the hell is going on. Because it's very convenient that the vaccines are out in rapid time, which coincide with when you would expect death from COVID to tail off anyway, when herd immunity is established, and also when the front loading has been dealt with. But that's it for me, so let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think realistically there could be a conspiracy for all the doctors to be in on it, or it's just what is expedient for them on their individual level at the moment instead, and there's enough going for them that it's just easy to kind of do what they're told and go along with it because they do see some short-term rewards, as you could say, useful idiots, I suppose, without understanding the greater ramifications of their actions. Either way, intrigued to hear what you guys have to say, and as always, until next time, have a good one.